Hey everybody, welcome back to the Mentor Nation podcast. John Abbas here again, and I either want to welcome you here for the first time or I want to welcome you back. And man, regardless of whether this is your first episode or your 30th, I have an unbelievable and very special guest for you today that's going to blow your mind. If this is your first time here, I just want to ask that you please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening. And if you are returning, I know a lot of you guys listen to this podcast on audio only, and many of you may not know this, but several months ago, I shifted from audio only to doing all interviews on video, and I published them on my YouTube channel. So even if you continue and only want to listen to these episodes on audio, it would mean a lot to me if you would take a minute and go to YouTube, hit the Mentor Nation podcast, and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. These damn algorithms with social media, it's ridiculous, but these things mean a lot, and it would mean a lot to me if you would just take a minute and do that. So with that being said, I want you all to brace yourselves for today's guest, because I'm not kidding you. He has one of the most inspiring stories that I have ever heard, and I was a better person after this interview. His name is Sean Swarner, and he beat stage 4 cancer, not once, but twice, two completely different stage 4 cancers. The first time he was 13 years old, he was given 6 months to live. The second time he was given 14 days to live and was preparing to be put on hospice care. And guess what? He beat it. He overcame it, even though the odds of doing so were less than winning the lottery 4 times in a row with the exact same numbers. Like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But his story doesn't stop there. He went on after beating cancer to become the first person in the world to climb Mount Everest as a cancer survivor. And get this, he did it with one lung. I know millions of people that can't do it, and they're in full health with 2 lungs, and he did it with 1 lung, and he kept going and kept going. From there, he stood atop the highest point on all 7 continents. He's skied to the South and the North Poles. He's completed the Hawaiian Ironman, and I mean, he's been interviewed by all kinds of people. He's been interviewed by Steve Harvey, CBS Evening News, Fox and Friends, The Today Show, Good Morning America, The Early Show, Huffington Post, and countless others. And guys, this interview and today's story is about mind over matter. It's about never giving up. It's about overcoming the limiting beliefs in your mind and never letting anyone ever tell you when your story is going to end. And in this interview, Sean also shares incredible insights on just how you can train your mind to just never let circumstances detract you from your dreams. I truly love this interview. I know you will too. So with that being said, please help me welcome Sean Swarner and enjoy. Sean, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the Mentor Nation podcast. I've been looking forward to this interview for some time now, and I just want to say thank you for being on from Kilimanjaro. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, exactly. With technology, it's amazing where you can come from.
Yeah. Appreciate you leaving base camp for a couple of minutes to do this talk with us. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, where it's like, 0 degrees and I'm in short sleeve shirt.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to give the audience just a little bit of a heads up before we get into the interview. Just crazy story. Todd is a good friend of mine, and he emailed me one day and he's like, "Hey, I think I have a great guest for your podcast." And he sent over your bio, and I'm just reading your bio and I'm like, oh my God. Like, just the things that you've been through. You've literally beaten stage 4 cancer twice, and we're going to get into that. You have set lots of records, first cancer survivor to climb up Mount Everest with a solo lung, which is just, but you've done a lot of really, really incredible things. And I was just so blown away that I couldn't wait to have you on. And so I was really hoping, Sean, that for today's interview, we could start with your story, but then I want to go as deep as I can into your mind for the audience today, because I believe for you to operate on the level that you operate after all that you've been through, you just have something really important inside of you, and you can change a lot of lives with your message. And so I'm excited to get into it, but I have to start with your story because that in and of itself is incredible. Can you just take us back, like, to your first cancer diagnosis? What happened? What was that like? How did you get through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And as soon as you said that you wanted to get in my mind, I was like, man, that's a dangerous place. You don't want to go there.
Maybe 6 inches away.
Right. The first diagnosis, it hit me like a ton of bricks because I had no side effects, no night sweats, no inkling of anything happening. I was 13, and the only reason they found it was because I suffered a knee injury from basketball. So I came down from a layup and I could hear my knee just like audibly snap, like the tendons and ligaments just crunching. And because of that, it triggered every other joint to swell up in my body. And that's what stuck me in the hospital. So they initially thought I had pneumonia. I grew up in a small town called Willard, Ohio. The population's 5,000. It hasn't changed much since. Like a farming community. My backyard was a bean field or a cornfield, depending on the season. And it's very difficult. So they stuck me in the hospital thinking I had pneumonia initially. And it's incredibly difficult to cure cancer sucking on a nebulizer. So I wasn't getting any better. They took me to Columbus, Ohio, where I remember the doctor in Willard at the smaller hospital, he pulled mom and dad out in the hallway. And that was the first time I heard the O word, oncologist, right? And the doctor asked my mom and my dad, do you guys know of an oncologist? And my mom instantly thought of her friend that she graduated with, who was at the time, I believe, the CEO of a hospital down in Columbus. So she calls him up and says, if one of your daughters got cancer, who would you take him to see? And he instantly said, Dr. Davis, Dr. Mellor Davis. So that was all my mom needed to hear. She's like, I trust it. Let's go. So we went down to Columbus, Ohio. They stuck me in the hospital. They did bone marrow tests where they just drilled in, a needle, this big surgical needle back in my lower spine area.
At 13 years old.
13, and they treated me as an adult. So they didn't knock me out. They didn't treat me as a pediatric patient. They treated me as an adult. So I remember feeling that needle passing my skin, going into my hip bone, and literally dragging the nerve endings with it as it's going down. I mean, the most horrible pain I've ever felt in my life. And they aspirated a piece of bone the first time, so they had to do it 2 more times. I mean, I still have the scars from it, right above both my butt.
Wow.
So they eventually diagnosed me with advanced stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And, here I am, 13 years old, on essentially the cusp of my life. My friends, their hormones were kicking in, growing hair in unusual places on their bodies. I was losing hair all over my body. And I think what mattered to them was petty in my mind. I didn't care about being popular in school. I didn't care about the nicest clothes. I didn't care about the nicest shoes. And I think at the time it was the Reebok Pump. So
I remember those.
Yeah.
I love those. I think they're like a collector's item today.
Right. So that stuff didn't matter to me because there were nights I went to bed literally terrified to close my eyes because I wasn't sure if I was ever going to wake up again.
So being 13, obviously it might be a little too early for you to have some realizations, like maybe a little bit later in life, but what was your mindset at that time? Were you thinking like, oh, I'm going to beat this? I mean, because they gave you how long to live?
The first cancer, they gave me 3 months to live.
So they told you 3 months to live, and you knew that, like they told your parents, or they told you as well with you in the room?
So they initially told my parents. My parents didn't tell me that I had cancer. They told me I had Hodgkin's lymphoma because my step grandmother passed away from lung cancer about 3 months before that. And they didn't want me as a teen, a young kid, to associate cancer with death, which I mean, it happens now. Right. So many people, they hear the C word, they think, oh my God, he's going to die, but that's not it. Right. It's how we have that association with what's going on. It's all marketing and branding. So it's branded as a death sentence. But my parents didn't want me to know about that. And I think that helped the first time around.
Now, did they put you just like, did you beat it like with the medication? Like, how did you, I mean, to go from 3 months to live to overcoming that is pretty incredible. Like what happened? They put you on a treatment, a trial.
I think everybody wants to know, like, what's the silver bullet?
Yeah.
And I don't think there was one thing that got me through it. It's kind of like the perfect storm, but for a good reason. So I had like a modern medicine, family support, prayer, and just an inner will to move forward. But also looking back at it, it was my perspective on things. It was how I looked at things. So I remember being 60 pounds overweight on the shower floor, bald from head to toe, pulling chunks of hair out of the drain and crying my eyeballs out. And to have a 13-year-old have to deal with that. Every time I went like this in the shower, my hair would just come out in chunks. Mm-hmm. But I also remember thinking that I had two choices. I could either fight for my life or give up and die. And I didn't want to give up and die because for me, I had so much to live for.
Right.
And then I also realized that in looking back at it, I realized that I wasn't focused on not dying. I was focused on living. So the perspective I had when I was going through the first cancer, I went towards what I wanted, not the avoidance of what I didn't.
Ooh, okay. I want to reiterate that because that is really good. And I think a lot of people need to hear that again, because I think a lot of people do that. They avoid pain instead of trying to go after the things that they want. They try to avoid all the discomfort. And so I love that you said that right there, because that's an important lesson for everybody in entrepreneurship and everything that they're doing. So you were living your life, you're 13, you get through it. When does it come back?
Well, it didn't come back. I was diagnosed with a second primary cancer.
Completely different.
Completely different and completely unrelated, and not related to like a side effect of the treatment, which happens to a lot of people. So these two cancers are completely unrelated, and I'm the only person who's ever been diagnosed with both of them. So it was Hodgkin's lymphoma and Askins sarcoma. So I was like a living, breathing, walking petri dish. I was a chemical cocktail experiment because no one knew what was going to happen. And this time around, I was 16, going in for a checkup for the first one. And in one day, they found a tumor on an X-ray the size of a golf ball. They did a needle biopsy where they took a needle and threaded it past my ribs to aspirate part of the tumor. They took out a lymph node. They put in a Hickman catheter, which is like a permanent IV. They cracked open my ribs, removed the tumor, put a drainage tube in, and started chemotherapy in less than 1 day. That's how dire the situation was. And because no one's ever had these two cancers, the second one has a prognosis of 6%.
6% survival rate.
6% survival rate. And if you add up both of the Hodgkin's and the Askins and look at the numbers, the chances of my survival was equivalent to you winning the lottery 4 times in a row with the same numbers.
Do you play the lottery?
I do. I don't even get one number right.
Dang, you used up all of your luck. No, I'm kidding.
I won the life lotto.
Yeah, exactly. So you go through that one. Is it same? Do they give you 3 months to live that time as well? Or
14 days?
14 days. Like, how do you overcome that? Like, I mean, I could imagine myself being a doctor giving that diagnosis and feeling like a complete idiot when I'm that wrong. Like, what happened? Did you just get better? Did you take treatment and it went into remission?
Initially, I think the doctor, and again, looking back at it, I think the doctor said, based on the numbers, he has 14 days to live. The hospital system wanted to put me in hospice. I remember a man of the cloth coming in and standing at the edge of my bed, reading me my last rites. And I looked at my mom and my dad, and I was like, well, what, no offense, what the hell is he doing? I'm not dead yet. And I had the vision of the movie Monty Python and the Meaning of Life, that first scene, with the Black Plague. Bring out your dead. They toss that old man on there. He's like, I'm not dead yet, but you will be soon. I was like, I'm not dead yet.
Absolutely.
So I kept fighting, and I told myself that I wanted to live. And the doctor said I was going to be in the hospital for at least 3 or 4 weeks if I got better. I was out in, I think, 6 days, because it's right here, man. Whether you
Right.
think you can or you can't, you're absolutely right. And when somebody tells you can't do something, why don't you prove them wrong?
That's another really important lesson. Is I think that so many people out there allow other people to label them, and they believe it, and they adopt that as their own identity. And what you said right there is just so important. I mean, it's not just even a cancer diagnosis, but just you're stupid or silly, or I mean, it's just people live and breathe by these labels, and you don't have to. You don't have to. I mean, that's so incredible. So you go through a lifetime worth of adversity before your 18th birthday. You get through it. So, like, what happens after? Because the reason I wanted to spend a little bit of time just in the down and dirty of like the prognosis and what you were thinking at the time, and what you were going through is just because, I think a lot of people right now are looking for what we're going to talk about in a minute. It's just like, their purpose. Like what am I living for? Or, what am I going to do? Or what's important, what matters, what doesn't matter? I know my wife and we're going through not a midlife crisis, but like, we're at a point now where we're focusing on things that have meaning far more than all of the other things that we had been focused on, like in our 20s. It's just like, does this bring us joy? And so I wanted to spend time in your early journey, because that made you who you are today, which is just a badass dominating the planet and all the mountains. And we're going to get into that. But so what happened next? Like, did you just go back to being a normal kid? And college?
It's funny you mention that, because I wanted to relive my high school years in college. So have you seen the movie Animal House?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I was Belushi full on, man. I loved college. I was a drinking, partying fool. I loved every minute of it. And I was kind of slowly figuring out how cancer affected me. Right. And it mostly came out when I was trying to date someone. It's not like you go out to dinner as casual dinner conversation. Hey, how's your meat? Oh, good. Salad's great too. Oh, I had cancer. It just doesn't come up like that. You're like,
right.
Wait, what? So for the longest time, I just kept trying to figure out how I was going to deal with it. Then I graduated college, went to grad school. I was 1,000 miles away from my family, from Ohio down to Florida. And I think that was the first time I looked in the proverbial mirror, and literal mirror too. I remember I was driving down from Ohio, and I was in my Honda Civic with my whole everything that I've ever owned in my entire life fit in that Honda Civic.
Yep.
So I'm driving down. I think I was in Virginia or West Virginia, and I started having a panic attack. I had to pull over, got a hotel, and because I had no idea what I was doing. And I just stood there for probably hours on end, staring at myself in the bathroom mirror, asking myself, what the F are you doing? What the F are you doing? Just constantly asking myself, where am I going? Like, purpose. What am I doing with my life? Where am I going? So I didn't know how to deal with it then. Now I know, take a couple deep breaths, be in the present moment, all those things. Right. But I went to bed. I kind of fell asleep because I was exhausted, I think. And then I kept driving the next morning. I was fine. But there were certain things that happened in my life where I started paying attention to them. And I realized that utilizing my personal core values, I could build the path that I wanted to build for my life. I wanted to go down. I could go down the path that I wanted for my life. I couldn't do anything about the past. It's done. It's written. But I have the journal still, and I can still write the rest of the chapters of my life.
That's awesome. When did you know that you wanted to impact people?
Probably in college, because I utilized my cancers, because I was a swimmer. Wow, competitive swimmer from like age 5. And I was a two sport athlete in college. I guess 3 if you include beer pong.
It's a sport. It's a sport.
got me through college, man. But I was a speaker, and I helped motivate the swim team because I wasn't getting any better. I had, with the surgery, I had my right lat muscle cut. So I was still swimming the same times as a 20-year-old, 18, 19, 20-year-old that I was when I was 15, 16 years old. So I got frustrated, but because I wasn't getting any better, I turned into a student assistant coach, and I started helping that way, utilizing what I've learned through the college or through the cancers, and kind of imparting that on the swimmers and my friends. So I think that's when I knew I wanted to make a difference. But with Everest and the other mountains, I didn't know until years later.
Gotcha. So this is cool because it seems like you had these traumatic experiences as a kid, and then those were over and done with, and you got back to being a normal kid. It's not like that set you on a path at that moment. You went back to college, you're doing your thing. You still have those experiences. And then you had obviously a defining moment. And then I want to move forward just a little bit. So, because I have this list here of all the things that you have done, and man, you've done a lot of crazy, like, where did that come from? Like starting to climb these mountains, and I mean, like Mount Everest, Kilometer, like where did that motivation come from? And why do you continue to do it?
Well, first of all, why I continue to do it, I think, excuse me, for a number of reasons. One is to continue providing hope to people touched by cancer. That's where it started. Again, one of my personal core values, giving back, providing something of quality. And recently I'm realizing I want to create more than I consume. I want to give back more than I take. And another one is, I think I'm more afraid of not living than I am of dying.
That's very powerful.
Well, I think, if you look at it without getting too morbid, let's say I was born here, and add 80 years, that's my life. That's it, man. That's all we're given. Yep. It's not like that continues on forever. What I do between these lines matters.
Absolutely. There's there's a motivational speech I listened. I really liked it, by the way. And it was just talking about your gravestone, and, you have the begin date, the end date, and that dash, that's your life. And it's what you do, with that dash that defines who you are. And he went on to say, like, live your life, how you would want them to talk about you at your funeral. And I think that's really, really, really important. And I also like what you said is, create more than you consume. That's another, I think, really important lesson, because a lot of people don't understand that. They're just me, consumers. And, we all have this energy, and it's, Tony Robbins says it best, the things that actually make you come alive are growth and contribution. The being selfish doesn't do anything for you morally or like with your energy. And so I really, really like that. So you started, and then we're going to get into I'm going to tie this all back together in just a minute with the message that you want to give entrepreneurs, because you speak all over the world. You speak on some pretty big stages. But I want to first finish up your story as far as the climbing. So what was the first mountain? What was the first one you tackled, and how did that come about?
This is going to sound crazy, but the first big mountain was Everest. I started with the big one.
See, I wanted to go to Everest, but I saw the video of now there's this long line.
Right.
Is that real?
I did it before that giant line was there. I did it before it turned into a circus.
I mean, it looked like the DMV. I was like, oh my, it's crazy. But so that was your first one. How did it take a long time to train for that? Or is it,
so I moved, let's see, I was living in Florida, like I said, at the time. And obviously I couldn't train on a giant sandbar. So I moved to Colorado, where I live now. And I remember the very first big mountain I climbed was in August, and we got 4 feet of snow. And I was like, what the hell did I get myself into? So I was living out of the back of the car. My brother was with me. We were camping, and we were living out of the back of my Honda Civic for months. We were homeless. My office was a payphone bank and the library. we had nothing, but I knew that I was going to make it happen. And that was in August, and I summited May 16th the next year. So what is it? 10 months, 11 months, maybe. Wow. 10 months.
Now, this whole time, like, did you have people telling you that you probably shouldn't do this? That this is like
everybody. Yeah.
Like, this is a stupid idea. Sean, don't, like, you only have one lung. Don't do this. So, like, were people worried about you?
Well, absolutely. I was told by numerous doctors and other people in the climbing industry that it was physiologically impossible. And I remember when I left Florida, my parents lived in South Carolina. So my brother and I drove up there to visit them, and then we took off out west. And I remember my dad's voice very vividly. And he said, "We didn't get you through 2 cancers to go kill yourself on a hunk of rock and ice."
That's dad's. Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. So I want to, like, can you just list off some of the things that you've, like, what are all you did? What's it called? The seven summits. So is that the 7 highest summits? I want to list. I'm reading your accolades, but I think it would be way cooler if you, like, talked about some of the things that you did, and then we're going to tie it into the lessons here right after. So what are all the mountains that you've climbed? What are some of the crazy things that you've done?
Well, I'm the only person in history to climb Mount Everest, the highest mountain on every continent, which is the 7 summits. Ski to both poles, which is called, and you include the 7 summits into the both poles. That's called the Explorer's Grand Slam, which I didn't name it. I think it sounds like a Denny's breakfast platter. So I have I'm the only person to do Everest, the 7 summits, ski to both poles, and complete the Hawaii Ironman triathlon.
What? You need to get a Guinness Guinness record for that.
But Guinness doesn't do the first. They always do that you can top, like the fastest, the slow, whatever, how many jumps of a jump rope, that you do.
Like, Guinness is overrated anyway. Like, you can set the stupidest. There was like one, it was happening, I think it was outside of Nashville, and they were calling all these people to come to the park downtown, and they set the world record for, like, who could hold the longest piece of dental floss. And I was just like, it's like the stupidest record I've ever heard of in my entire life. Like, that's just crazy. So you're the only person in the world to do that. So I want to bring this to, you're speaking on stage right now to 1,000 entrepreneurs. You're the keynote speaker, and they're all in different phases. They're all living different lives. And you know this, some are happy, some are depressed, some are going through some things, some are battling health issues. You've done it all. And you've come out on the other side, and you have the ability to push yourself mentally and physically. You're on stage and you're speaking. What's the message that you want to give to them? And this is the meat and potatoes of what I wanted to talk to you about today, because you said some great things in an interview that I listened to you about core values, purpose, and I really want to, like, spend some time there. But what's your message?
I would say that the bottom line of the message would be to understand what your core values are, your personal core values are. Because if you don't know what those are and you don't utilize them, you don't know who you are.
Right. How do you find those? Like, what do you, I mean, I know what I do, right? I just sit and I'll think about what aligns with who I am as a person, integrity, things like that. But, like, I'm really curious for somebody that maybe they don't know how to define their core values. Like, how would you do it?
That's a great question.
Yay.
Right here's how you do it.
You created a tool. How convenient. And we're going to show everybody where to get that.
I actually created a 3-week course called the Big Hill Challenge. Walks people through finding what their personal core values are. And there's a list of 60 of them. They pick 10. And then usually that's where most people stop. They're like, oh, these are my core values. Right. But how do you use them?
Yeah.
Now that you know what they are, how do you use them? So I have people go through and rate how they're actually living each one of those values. So say for me, family. If I pick family as one of my personal core values, right, it must mean a tremendous amount to me.
Right.
But I'm actually living that value at a 3. I can see where I'm lacking, and now I know exactly where I need to put more attention to become a happier person, to be more complete, more fulfilled. If I'm looking at an adventure, and I rated adventure down there, and I'm living adventure at a 4 or 5. Get out and go do stuff.
Absolutely. It's something that you have in common with every other successful person that I interview on this podcast is it's those little things. It's those little things that you actually make the time to do that average people always make excuses not to do. Writing goals, reading them out loud, like writing down their core values. When you open up a business, your mission statement, you're like, this isn't just some cheesy, like, this is your life that you're designing and you're building. And I love, and it's refreshing to hear you say that you did this exercise. You actually sat there, you reflected, and you have they changed over time or?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what I value now isn't what I valued when I was in college, being a party animal. And people have, people have business plans.
Yeah.
You know how to purposely and properly run a business for success.
Right.
How can you do that with yourself if you don't have a plan?
That's exactly right. Chasing a treasure with no map.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So now for you have an ability to push yourself. I mean, I'm sure some of these expeditions that you've done, you were probably extremely exhausted, and you're still here. And cold, and you've survived them all, and you continue to do it. You continue to beat odds. You continue to break records. What's the conversation that goes on with yourself to be able to do that? Like when you're really tired and when you're really struggling or when you really don't want to do something, how do you get yourself to do it anyway?
Honestly, and I'm thinking back to the North Pole, the latest expedition. It was the conversation I had in my mind literally was something like this. Each step, right? I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is fantastic. This is awesome. This is beautiful. My God, it's cold. This sucks. What are you doing here? Call the helicopter. No, don't do that. Keep pushing forward. This is fantastic. You're right. This is beautiful. I have this internal dialogue out of my mind, up and down, literally like every 3 steps. But what keeps me going is I'm a huge believer in the mind-body component in visualization and my purpose. So my purpose is, it started with Everest, and I had a flag that had names of people touched by cancer. And I took that to the top of the world. I do it every year as a fundraiser for a cancer climber up Kilimanjaro. We have a flag it's a hope flag where we put names of people touched by cancer. And I'll send you the link so people can add names to it. But awesome. Going to the North Pole, I had a flag that had thousands and thousands of names on there, and they were I could feel them pushing me forward. So what I did was I visualized myself at the end, on the summit at the North Pole, keynote speaking on stage with a standing ovation. I start at the end and I work backwards, but that's where most people stop. I add in other senses.
Right.
So on Everest, I could hear the styrofoam crunching, or the snow crunching under my feet. I could hear the wind whipping by. I could smell the ozone. I could feel the sun burning on my face. Right. But then I take it even a step further. How do I feel up there? And I knew I was going to collapse to my knees and cry. Going up Kilimanjaro, I take a group up every year. Like I said, this will be my 21st summit. And our success rate is double that of the average. And I think it's because I help people tap into what matters most to them. So some people are motivated by tough love. Hey, you'll never make it up there. Some people are motivated by encouragement. Hey, you got this. Keep moving forward. Come on. And some people are motivated by, hey, remember why you're doing this. But right as the sun starts coming up, and like I said, I've been up here July, it'll be 21 times. I still get emotional.
Wow.
Because I love getting people to the top and seeing them cry. It's not tears of sadness. It's happy.
Right.
But that's the reason why people make it. It's not the new car. It's not the new house. It's how you feel on the inside, because that's what makes it real to you, because we're human beings, man. We need to tap into our emotions, and that's going to make it real.
Absolutely. And man, that's something that I know that I've struggled with for years. Believe it or not, I don't want to beat a dead horse, because I think in the last 3 episodes that I've recorded, one was like, they're all successful. One was like a world-renowned doctor. And we all came back to the same conversation, all 3 interviews, which is tapping into emotions, being authentic, being vulnerable. Guys especially are just so bad at that, and they just mask everything. But, it's just so powerful to see you, because you're a perfect example of someone living a passionate, purposeful life. And I think we all aspire to do that. I think a lot of us get off track sometimes. I think a lot of us question what we're doing, if that's what we're meant to do. And, and I don't just mean career, but I just like, for those listening, like something like taking that trip to Mount Kilimanjaro, that could literally change your entire life. Like I could imagine, just you push yourself, you do something different, you stretch yourself, you trust, take chances. I mean, these things will grow you as a person. And it's just so awesome to interview somebody that is living that kind of life, that is every day there's meaning in that day. It's not just get up, what am I going to do? Like there's a why at the end of it. And so for those listening that they're not there yet, they are really questioning, because I know I have conversations with some of the audience, and it seems like, especially during COVID, it just seems like a lot of people are in limbo in their life. What would you say to them?
I know a lot of people are living in uncertainty right now. We don't know what the future holds, but you can make the best of every moment you have. Like I said earlier, there were nights I went to bed not knowing if I was going to wake up the next day. That's uncertain. But if you know the situation is going to suck, going up Kilimanjaro, you're freezing. If you know it's going to be a miserable time, if you still have a good attitude about it, what we say in climbing is, it's going to suck, but it sucks less.
That's right.
Putting it very, putting it from an incredibly intelligent perspective, it's going to suck, but it sucks less.
Absolutely. How long does it take to get up Kilimanjaro?
7 days up and down. But it's funny, you were talking about the emotional side of things, and how guys are a lot of guys are afraid to tap into that. We had a guy up there who was in the military. He was a Marine, and he was crying at the top. Like it will happen. But wow. he tried to cover it up, right? And he's up there in tears. He's like, it's such a long way down. I'm like, I know you're crying because you're happy.
I do that, man. I do that too. I watch a movie, and like my wife will be like right next to me, and I'm just like rubbing my eye, and I'm just like, I don't even know why I do that. It's like, I don't want to come off weak or something, but it's not just with movies or with that, but it's just like, man, living in that emotion, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. And so, man, I would love to come up to Kilimanjaro with you. Like, oh man, is it something that a novice can do?
I have taken people from 13 to 70 years old. So absolutely, there's nothing tactical about it. My mom went up when she was, I want to say 65, 66, maybe.
No way.
She terrified of heights, and she got to the last camp, which is right around the corner here. And I remember after dinner, I laid down in her tent, and we were looking up the ceiling, and I was like, Mom, I know you've been telling me what to do for the past 40 some years, but I really need you to listen to me now. And she said, you don't think I can make it, do you? I was like, I have no doubt you can make it, but it's a round trip.
Right.
You have to come back down. And she actually volunteered to not go. I've never turned anyone around. She volunteered to not go, but bless her heart, she woke up at midnight, hugged everybody, and wished them good luck. Went up, she went back to bed. She woke up when we came back down.
Man, that's awesome. So if you had to label what your superhero skill is it helping people shift their perspective quickly, or is it helping them find their purpose? Like, what is your superpower? Because I mean, obviously a lot of people follow you. Everyone loves to interview you. Like, what is it that is your strength?
That's a great question. And it's funny because when I was going through my cancers, I actually collected the Superman comic book. So you're talking my game now about superhero. But I would nice. I would say resiliency. Resiliency and perspective.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll just tell you a quick story in the audience too. So when I was in the Navy for 6 years, and I think I've told this a long time ago, but right before deployment, I was just in a really bad mood because it was kind of depressing actually. We were going to go for 6 months. This is my first deployment being on the ocean for 6 months. We've done little 2-week workups, and I was just like, how in the hell am I going to get through 6 months of this? And I was like, just whining and complaining and just being annoying. And I'll never forget this, man. It was this, one of the girls I was on watch with, she just got tired of hearing me bitch about it. And she didn't tell me where we were going, but long story short, we ended up volunteering at the Children's Cancer Center in Seattle for kids with like terminal cancers. And oh man, like just seeing how happy they were and like, just what they're going through and just most positive people in the world. And I walk, and I'll never forget that. It was just 20 years ago. And to this day, I remember it like it was yesterday. It has shifted my perspective forever. And so anytime like I'm ever going through anything, because like my friends and family, they're like, man, you're just always positive about it. But it's always because I can just put myself in that day. And like, if they can go through that and be the happiest people in the world, who am I to bitch about anything ever? And it's so powerful what that gratitude perspective can do for you. So I wanted to ask you that because, listening to you in this interview, I feel like your superpower is just that, like shifting people's perspective, turning any situation, spinning it into, a problem that you get the ability to overcome and get through it. And it's awesome. So like, great job with that. Any final words and thoughts? Cause I want to take the last minute and make sure people can follow you, but anything else that you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up the interview today? Just any message, any thoughts, any action steps, anything.
Well, I think, human beings are, excuse me, creatures of repetition. And what you do every day defines who you are as a person. What do parents do when they wake up in the morning? They have a routine.
Yep.
What do meteorologists do when they wake up in the morning? They have a routine. What do Olympic athletes do when they wake up? They have a routine. If you want something different, do something different. It's as simple as that.
I love that. It really is that simple. So for everybody listening that wants to follow your work, they want to climb mountains with you, they want to follow your content, they want to listen to your stuff. I'll talk to you about it after, but I would love to purchase some of your autograph books. Can you share with everybody where to get your book, the title of it, how they can follow, the best place to follow you and connect and just see what you're up to on a daily basis?
Just go to SeanSwarner.com. Okay. You'll find everything there. That's pretty simple. All social media, it's Sean Swarner, spelled the proper way, SEAN, and then like the Warner Brothers, but just S on the front. Swarner.com.
Got it. Is your book on Amazon?
It is.
Okay.
Keep Climbing is on Amazon, but the other one I don't think it is. So if they just go to the website, then I'll sign it and send it out.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Sean, I just want to say thank you so much, man. I think you did just said some really, really powerful things, a lot of nuggets, a lot of wisdom. The big thing that I got out of this interview is just somebody always has a tougher time than you do, and they're doing big things. Like that's the big thing I got out of this. Somebody has been through way worse and has gone way further. I've never dealt with any of those things. I've never climbed those mountains, but I think that's just, it's really awesome. This was a fantastic interview. And I just hope I can have you back on here one day soon after you write your next book and you continue. Would love to have you on, share some of the new things that you've learned with everybody. Thank you for being on today.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And the only, there's no difference between me and anybody else. I just might have a warmer jacket.
True. And you live in Colorado. Colorado's awesome.